Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy Friday as we head into the weekend. Should be an interesting day. Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, lots of stuff. One of the biggest stories right now concerns the former director of the FBI, James Comey.
Yeah. Well, you know, little notes in the sand with shells.
Oh, it just happened to be that way. No, that was a natural accident.
Yeah, it looked that way too.
Yeah,
because
on his beach.
On his beach,
Yeah.
and it didn't look like it was, like sand had blown over the shells.
Oh no,
It
looked fresh.
like they were just, they were,
and not only that, but
footprints.
they were. It was a tight grouping. It wasn't like something you had to really think about when you looked at it. It was like, there it is. That's what it says.
Intentional.
Yeah, in case you don't know what we're talking about, the former director of the FBI, James Comey, was out for a stroll on his beach near his property, and he just happened to stumble across, right next to the water, shells that were laid out in the shape of 8, 6, 4, 7.
So 8647.
Yes.
86 'em.
Well, that's what anyone in their right mind would think, and I'm sure that's what James Comey thought, too. And you know what's funny now? He's trying to pretend. See, it's worked before in the past. He's played dumb or naive. This is the guy, you have to remember something. This is the former director of the FBI. This is not like a part-time security cop at Walmart. This is the former director of the FBI. Now he's trying to say, well, I didn't think that it was anything violent.
Who would have known?
Well, I had no idea.
You would have known, Mr. Comey. I would know. Jim would know.
Yeah.
Everybody in their right mind knows when you say 86. Yeah, 86, I'm like in the mob. Hey, go 86 the dude. I don't want to see his face anymore on the face of the earth. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was that not an intentional...
Take the cannolis, leave the gun.
Yeah, take the cannolis, leave the gun. And, he accidentally shot himself. But he 86'd himself. But either way, I think, speaking of 86ing, Comey might have 86'd himself because that was a call for all these wannabe would-be assassins out there to take a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Bill, I think it can be even more devious. Even if it were something that he just thought of doing in the moment, right? Being the former director of the FBI, he has to have known what he was doing immediately, and he would be the first, I'm sure, to say to some agent, "You can't do that. You cannot, in your position, do that." Even as a former director of the FBI, you have responsibilities. And Bill, I think, honestly, in my opinion, I know this is the conspiracy guy in me again. I know, but I think it was more than just a random attack. I think it was a signal. It was a signal to maybe some sleepers out there, or maybe some people who are not to be trusted, who are traveling with the president. This is a dangerous situation. He is in one of the most dangerous parts of the world for our president, and this guy sends this message out.
Well, let me ask you a question. Could it be, because there have been other people calling for his assassination, whether they be celebrity or, vague political, shots at him.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I look at Scott Jennings, who was, in an interview situation, and Lee Smith, he was talking to her, and she basically admitted that it was a Democratic Party organized, insurrection.
Are mad. Why the base is mad at some of the leaders in Washington is not because they're not left enough. It's because, Chuck Schumer came out with no strategy, no forewarning, and just said, we're going to fold on the CR. I mean, I think he could have done a better job of explaining what the strategy was and what we're going to do, but there wasn't anything like that. I think Democrats are learning, and I'm going to agree with you that Democrats cannot only be the party of resistance. We cannot, like, we resisted so hard between 2017 and 2024. We impeached the guy, like, we prosecuted him, convicted him of 34 felony counts, and guess what? He still got elected. So I don't know how much harder we can resist now.
Are you admitting that that the case against Trump in New York was part of the organized Democratic Party resistance?
It was a Democratic prosecutor, and at the time, I said I thought it was unwise. I went on Fox News and said
there were Democrats who said this at the time.
There were a lot.
Just to be clear, this wasn't. Just to be clear, everybody who now touts the 34 felonies, take it from Liz. This was not a real case. This was a plot to upend the presidential campaign, which backfired.
I just think it was a boneheaded move by Alvin Bragg, but it's not his first or last one. So.
This is why we invite Liz, because she's a plain-spoken New York Paul who can really tell it.
That was the commentary, Bill.
Yeah,
they're starting to show their true selves.
And I think they're going to show it more, and I think there's going to be more Comeyisms out there.
Now, do you think he should go to jail?
Absolutely, because he knew better. I mean, there are people saying, "Oh, well, there was nothing really illegal about it. It was just poor choice." Yeah, well, you know what? Do that against Biden or Pelosi or any other a Democrat.
The guy who pulled the fire alarm at the Capitol, remember him? The representative who pulled the fire alarm
used to be a principal. Yeah,
I think they took him in. I don't know. I don't think they jailed him, but they took him in, and he ended up having to leave. He didn't get elected again. He was gone from Congress.
Well, damn the public and damn what they want. We're Democrats in charge, and we get what we want, and we don't adhere to Trump. They don't acknowledge him. They bully him. And they do and when he still wins. I mean, I've seen so many things on the tariffs that it's the wrong thing. Even what I think is the fake Reagan thing, and I've never seen that before. All of a sudden, just shows up, but all of a sudden, China was in trouble. Mm-hmm. They were in real trouble. What did they do in the past 24 hours? They capitulated. We're down to 10% now. They said, okay.
A 90-day tariff agreement, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think Comey has to go to jail, and I'll tell you why. If you walked into a theater and pulled the fire alarm, and you didn't have it, and there was no fire, and you just were doing it as a prank, and it wasn't meant to be serious, wouldn't they put you in jail?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just because, even if there was, let's just say hypothetically, he was just goofing around, Comey. No. You cannot goof around with something as important and potentially as deadly as the topic of assassination of a president, especially as a former director of the FBI. If he had just been an agent and done that, they would have arrested him. As director of the FBI? No, he should not get off. As a matter of fact, Tulsi Gabbard was asked this question. Listen.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. Any other person with the position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
The strange thing about it as of right now, as of the time that we're recording this, we've had a reaction and a response by Tulsi Gabbard, by Kristi Noem, by Kash Patel, but we haven't had one from Pam Bondi yet, and she's the one who has to drop the hammer.
Yeah. Now let me just say this: if she's listening, just remember this, because even Tulsi sat there and missed one point. She said anybody that's important that does something like that would be held accountable. If you did it, if I did it, if John Q. Public did something stupid like that. Well, maybe if you're there are celebtards and really some weird leftards that have done things like that, but on average, John Q. Public would be held accountable for doing that, and there would be a price to pay.
Right.
You would you may not do time or a lot of time, but you would lose privileges that you would never, ever, ever, ever have again. So this guy needs to be held accountable, and you got to wonder, what else has he been up to?
Well,
You
see,
know,
I think
or
he's
behind?
part of the deep state. I mean, not just
Absolutely.
he's not an associate member. I think he's a part of the deep state. It goes back to what he was doing. I mean, do you remember when he investigated Hillary Clinton and about her bleach bidding the material that she had, and was it 35,000 emails or 33,000 emails that she just happened to destroy? And he gets
It was
up.
an accident, you know.
Well, he gets up on TV at a press conference and says, "She did this wrong. She did this wrong. She did this wrong. She did this wrong." I mean, and he's setting up a case to arrest her, and he says, "But we don't think that it's a good. It would be a good move at this time to file charges against her." It was like everybody crossed their eyes. They couldn't believe that he did what he just did. He literally made a case to arrest her, and then he said he's not going to arrest her. That's the kind of guy James Comey is. Let me comment. Let me read you the comments from some of the other people. Christy Nome said, disgraced former FBI Director James Comey just called for the assassination of POTUS Trump. DHS and Secret Service is investigating this threat and will respond appropriately. This is important because Secret Service, it used to be under the Treasury, but it's under Homeland Security right now. So that means a lot. She's on top of it. Kash Patel, he wrote, we're aware of the recent social media post by former FBI Director James Comey, directed by President Trump, at President Trump. We are in communication with the Secret Service and Director Curran, and primary jurisdiction is with Secret Service on these matters, and we, the FBI, will provide all necessary support. So he's saying we're not the point on this, but we're going to support the Secret Service, which is point on this, any way that we can. So there's some people taking it seriously. I'm surprised. Maybe Pam Bondi figures that she can't comment right now because she's going to drop the hammer. You can only hope, but she has gotten a bit weak-kneed, it would appear, over the last couple of weeks. And, I mean, she comes out every so often and makes a gentle statement in the White House driveway and then disappears again. She's got to stand tall right now. And this is, you may say, well, what? You think it's important to arrest Comey? Listen, I don't care what he was. I do care about what he just did. What he just did was essentially say to somebody out there, kill President Trump. That's what he did. 86-47. There are some, if you're not aware of what 86 really means, some people have said it means go 8 miles into the woods and put him 6 feet under. That's one definition. Another definition is bury him, meaning 8 feet long, 6 feet wide, the shape of a grave. Put him in a grave. That's where these terms come from. 86, 88, 47, 86, 47. All these numbers. But seriously, this is a dangerous thing that he's done. Bill, and Trump right now is in one of the most, if not the most dangerous parts of the world. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, look, plain and simple, 86 means to take somebody out. Yeah, 86 to do it. You know, it doesn't matter how the slang came about or the term came about. The simple fact is, it means what it means. And he had intent. He knew what it is. He knew what it was. And he knew what he was doing. So he knows, you know, that there was intent there. And for that, he should do some time, and we won't know until time, you know, we get some water under this bridge, because somebody somewhere is going to take him to hand on that and go out there and try. Will they succeed? If they do, is it on him?
We should take a break right now. I just looked at the clock on the wall. We've gotten so caught up in this first story. We'll come back to it, but first, a reminder to like and share the show. Dan Scavino, who is an aide to President Trump, he said, he posted this on X, Comey truly is a POS. While he claimed not to know what 8647 means, there's no doubt that the former disgraced FBI director knows exactly what he's doing, with a plea to bad actor/terrorist to assassinate the POTUS while traveling internationally. Don't let him get away with it. That's Scavino, who, by the way, is traveling with the president right now. So the president knows what happened.
Yeah, and for him to do that, you fire up these radicalized people, these sleeper agents. They get out there, and if they try and they fail or whatever happens, it's going to get the left fired up because they've been radicalized to where I see what I thought were good people doing similar posts. Sitting there going, well, it's time we take this dude out. And I'm going, these are from what I would think are mainstream American people, happen to be Democrat, happen to not like Trump, they happen to hate him. They didn't happen to do any of that before except be a Democrat. So what's the connection here?
It's funny you should say that. That term, 8647, has become like a rally cry to the far left on X.
Right. So does that mean, and everything that Democrats do, it's pretty obvious, is a organized plan. Even the radicalization of things, it's organized. It's all part of this plan, and it's not good. And they take the most negative thing and they try to flip it into a positive. There was a poll out the other day that said if voters had it all to do over again, 97% of the Republicans said that they would vote for Trump again. Kamala supporters, close to equal number, said that she would sit there and they would put her in again. And then they said it's likely that Kamala would win this time in an election with Trump. Well, let me tell you something. She didn't the last time. She won't this time. And he's not running again. And if you think you're going to run her, go ahead. Make our day.
Folks, it's been less than a year since President Trump was almost killed in Butler, PA. It hasn't been a full year. People seem to think it's ancient history. It's like long ago and far, far away. No.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
What?
Who was the FBI director back?
It was Chris Wray.
Yeah, Chris Wray.
Yeah,
right.
The guy who took Comey's place. And he was as bad, by the way, as Comey. It truly is amazing. I think right now the problem that Kash Patel has is that the FBI is a swamp of people who are against the president and the administration. As a matter of fact, there's a story. I should read this to you because it does kind of relate. The FBI on Thursday closed down the corruption squad that backed Jack Smith's witch hunt against President Trump. So there was a group of FBI agents who, and I guess lawyers too, who all got together. They became the corruption squad, but they really weren't corruption. They should have been called the frame squad. Their job was to bring President Trump down no matter what. The thing that bothers me about the story that I have in my hand, the unit was dubbed CR-15. It was involved in the FBI's Arctic Frost investigation. They have all these dumb, stupid code names, like it's like you're playing a Bond movie on your DVD. But what it says according to NBC News, FBI agents involved in the corruption squad will be reassigned. See, that bothers me. See, they've already proven...
They're still around.
But I think, Bill, I think that's the majority in Washington as opposed to the minority. I think that the FBI, the problem Kash Patel has, he has a building filled with people who don't want to see him succeed.
No, they don't want to see him succeed. And Democrats like to put people down, and they use race to, they use his race against him. They use his, everything about him. I see nothing but negativity cast on the guy. They're making fun of the individual. He's being bullied by these people.
You mean Patel?
Patel, yes.
Yeah.
He's being bullied by the department that he heads. He's being bullied from all over from the left.
Last week, didn't we read a story about how they were trying to sell the story that he was spending more times in nightclubs in Washington than in his office during the daytime?
Well, they're going, what can we accuse him of? Well, I go to nightclubs. He probably does too,
Yeah.
They're taking their bad and throwing it on this guy. And maybe he has been to a nightclub. I don't know. But neither do you. And I've seen him working more than I see you working. So, this is a bunch of crap.
Laura Logan said yesterday, we talked about this. She said her sources in Washington, her sources say that the executive orders and much of the regular orders being passed down by people who are high up in the Trump administration are being ignored by the deep state.
Yes, they are. But that gets down to that. Well, you know what? We're not going to acknowledge that he's the president. So anything he puts down, executive order, they ignore. They don't understand that executive order is exactly that.
Does that mean what it says when you say that says to me that's one of the reasons why a guy like James Comey can put some shells together on a beach, take a picture, spread it on his social media account, and say, essentially, kill the president. Because he's never had any consequences. He's done a ton of bad stuff already, and everybody's given this guy a pass.
Let me just use a word here in a statement that the left loves. There was a judge, I can't remember who it was. If I go to Google, I can find it real quick. It's a new story. Mm-hmm. But this judge said that we have a society where we have judges performing judicial insurrection. Now, you have these people that are deep staters, whatever you want to call them, the Comeys and whatnot, that are deep in the White House, and they're going, we will not acknowledge that Trump is the president. Again, a form of insurrection. They have a Democrat plot to do nothing, and that was admitted on CNN, or laid out there for you. And if you look at it, it is, the party that wants to point the finger of insurrection is indeed the party that is guilty of a blatant, widespread, ongoing insurrection.
Well, look at what happened in Milwaukee with Judge Hannah Dugan. She was the judge who, when she heard that there were some ICE officers in the hallway outside of her courtroom, and they were there to arrest someone who was in her court before her, an illegal, she decided to take matters into her own hands, take the illegal to another door that led into a private entrance and exit to her building, and told him to disappear, essentially, and then stall the agents. So now everybody's surprised that she was arrested. I heard that there are protests. There are protests. Oh, they're protesting. She shouldn't be arrested. I'm so sick. I don't know about you guys. I think I do, because if you're listening to us, there's a good chance you feel the same way. But I'm sick and tired of capitulating to these leftist illiterates. And I mean that. I don't mean to sound like we're elitist, but the fact of the matter is I think most people on the left, they don't read what's going on. They truly don't know what's going on. I have friends of mine who I've admired for years who are professionals in many other areas of their life, but when it comes to politics, they're numbskulls.
Yeah, but here's your problem, and I'm not trying to be in their defense, but you remember our experiment with AI the other day, and I look at all its references, whether it's 25, 35, all mainstream, known, and even some of the lesser ones, I still knew who they were. Every stinking one of them were sources you should be able to trust. They're mainstream, but they have gone woke a long time ago. CBS, ABC, NBC. They're going to be woke. MSNBC, they're going to be woke. The Hill is woke. The Atlantic is woke. All of these things.
All these, exactly.
Yeah, so when you go LA Times, New York Times, Washington, Post or whatever, all of a sudden you're going like, we are in a sea of left raging lunatics, and they drive the news and the narrative. So somebody goes, AI says you can't do this. Well, you programmed it. Of course you can't do it according to it. But let's go and get beyond that, and let's look at the real facts. Let's get beyond what you read as the news, and let's see what really happened. Like Ross Perot used to say, you got to open up the hood and get under the hood to get to the engine to see what's wrong with it.
Yeah, that's true. And I think you're right. AI is programmed. The first answers from AI are usually the superficial, easy ones for it to find. Mm-hmm. It's the quickest way to get you an answer. And those are usually based upon, like Bill said, the propaganda pieces, the hit pieces that the left puts out into its social media. When you look at the answer and say that can't be right, you've got to go deeper, and here's why, and you explain to the AI, okay, that's not necessarily the case. Why don't you think of it this way? That's when the AI starts to look into sources that are buried deeper down.
You tell it the source to go to. Look, you got to go to the Federalist Papers. You got to go to the Constitution itself. Don't read anybody's interpretation.
Yep.
Just go by what it says. Oh, well, if I do it that way.
Yeah.
No crap, Sherlock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't give me, Joe Blow's interpretation of the Constitution. Go look at the Constitution and see for yourself.
Then it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm hoping. Look, I wish no ill on anybody, but the fact of the matter is he wished ill on the President of the United States. And by the way, I would submit that a president who's had 2 assassination attempts on his life in the past 10 months, 2 assassination attempts already that we know of. There may be many more that we don't know of. When a guy's had that many failed assassination attempts, and you have the former FBI director coming out saying, hey, let's do it again. That's reckless, and that's unlawful, and he should be arrested by not tomorrow, not next week. Don't think much more about this Pam Bondi and whoever it is at the the Secret Service. Get your guys together, get their cuffs out, and go put him in cuffs and put him in jail. Let him explain to the public what the heck he really meant. There are laws out there. Even if he didn't mean to commit violence, the fact is there was reckless endangerment. He may not wanted to have hurt the president, but by doing what he did was irresponsible, and it was also illegal. I'm not a lawyer, folks. I played one on TV, which is true, but I am not a lawyer, but I can tell you, he's broken laws. He belongs in cuffs. And enough of this nonsense, folks, about, well, he was a former FBI director. He was a former official in government. He served honorably. Nah, stop it. Look what they did to the former president of the United States. Look what they did to Donald Trump. He was the former president friggin' of the United States, and they wanted to put him in jail. They tried desperately to put him in cuffs. They wanted to send him to Rikers Island. Do you remember? They wanted to send him to Rikers Island, and everybody said, oh, you can't send him to Rikers Island with the other prisoners. That will be too dangerous. And they said, well, we'll give him his own cell away from the other prisoners so they can all see him. They wanted to embarrass him to death. a proud and distinguished man. Now, I'm at a point in my life where enough. The left has gotten away with one thing after the other, riots in Seattle, riots in Portland. Arrest him. It's simple.
I agree.
It's simple. Put him in jail.
I'm tired of 2020. Well, you guys lost that. You're denying that. You know, you didn't want us to see everything, but apparently now I don't have the story in front of me, but I can tell you this. You can Google it. If not, I'll bring it in tomorrow.
Yeah.
The simple fact is the 2020 election has been examined, and all of a sudden, looking into the votes, turns out there were a lot of votes. There's an exact number. Trump won the election, but it was not given to him. The votes weren't counted. We know votes that were taken away.
He knew it. He said it, and they laughed at him. The left and the media laughed at him.
Because they didn't have the proof at the time to do anything, and now it's too late. I mean, that term is over, so if it comes out, well, we'll have to make sure that never happens again.
No. Might I submit, Bill, they should find out who did the corruption and put him in jail. Now.
Well, you know what? There used to be a thing in school. Mm-hmm. You do something bad, and you get caught. You either sat in the corner or you had time out. Maybe in the next election period, the Democrats get time out. Mm-hmm. You know, speaking of timeouts, it's time for you to like and share our show as we take a timeout.
So it's interesting what's happening right now. Maybe by the time you hear this podcast, there will be some action.
Happened. Yeah.
If that happens, great. But if they decide to pass on this, I would say that you can give up on anything major happening in Washington. The other big story yesterday, Bill, was they were talking about they had a big hearing at the Supreme Court about these district justices. It wasn't really about them per se, but it really in the long run, it was. It's in a fiery rebuke from the Supreme Court bench on Thursday. U.S. Solicitor General John Sauer denounced the judicial insurrection against President Trump's second-term agenda. You know, what's interesting, Bill, is Sauer sounds like he has the same ailment that RFK Jr. has. Another smart guy with, there's a term for it, a speech impairment. And Kennedy will tell you exactly what it is. You know, Kennedy didn't always have that. It was something that he got as he got older. But I want to play for you a cut from Sauer in that hearing yesterday. Listen.
A cascade of such universal injunctions followed. Since January 20th, district courts have now issued 40 universal injunctions against the federal government, including 35 from the same 5 judicial districts. This is a bipartisan problem that has now spanned the last 5 presidential administrations. Universal injunctions exceed the judicial power granted in Article 3, which exists only to address the injury to the complaining party. They transgress the traditional bounds of equitable authority, and they create a host of practical problems. Such injunctions prevent the percolation of novel and difficult legal questions. They encourage rampant forum shopping. They require judges to make rushed, high-stakes, low-information decisions. They circumvent Rule 23 by offering all the benefits but none of the burdens of class certification. They operate asymmetrically, forcing the government to win everywhere while the plaintiffs can win anywhere. They invert the ordinary hierarchy of appellate review. They create the ongoing risk of conflicting judgments. They increase the pressures on this court's emergency docket. They create what Justice Powell described as repeated and essentially head-on confrontations between the life-tenured and representative branches of government. And they disrupt the Constitution's careful balancing of the separation of powers.
Solicitor General John Sauer, and he's a smart guy. He really is. There was more to this conversation. Clarence Thomas asked a question, and Thomas is a very smart guy. He actually had the line of the day, I think. Listen.
He sure did.
General, when were the first universal injunctions used?
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lucan's Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the D.C. Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. Now, if you look at the cases that the either party cite, you see a common theme. The cases that we cite, like National Treasury's Employment Union, Perkins against Lucan's Oil, Frothingham in Massachusetts against Mellon, going back to Scott against Donald, and all of those are cases where the court considered and addressed the sort of universal, in that case, statewide issue of provision of injunctive relief. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who are appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those were very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
Wow. So we got along okay until, what do you say, until the 1960s without injunctions, and all of a sudden, bingo, you know. I think it's interesting how Thomas cuts to the chase. He has a unique way of listening and then honing in on a certain point, and he does it succinctly and in a way that everybody can see it.
It's the economy of words. He gets right to the point.
Exactly right. And I don't know where this is going to go. I think it's amazing that most every lower court in the United States allows TV cameras in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court does not. It'll allow microphones in there. You can record audio, but no cameras, which I think is wrong. If it's good enough for the lower courts to have cameras in the room, why isn't it good enough for the Supreme Court? What are they? Are they special? I don't think so. But that's
you might want to hit the TV sometimes if you got to watch it, you know.
That's true. I guess maybe they figure the ratings aren't that great when you see 9 judges all trying to pontificate.
Or you see Amy Comey Bennett over there saying something stupid where you go, okay, we've got a traitor in the bunch.
Oh, we sure do. I don't think she's to be counted on for siding with the administration on this.
Not one iota. She was snuck in under the radar, but Trump didn't know. So I don't hold him responsible for that. I hold the people that recommended her, probably Pence.
Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts too. I think it probably was Pence. Pence was the D.C. insider. He knew people. Trump knew nobody in the first term. That's different now. Bill, do you know where Trump's going today? I know he was in UAE. He was in Saudi Arabia, and he was in Qatar.
The thing that he might be waiting on is to see what happens. You know, yesterday's deal to meet with Zelensky and Putin in Istanbul was put off, but apparently it has been firmly scheduled for today. So probably while we're recording, it's going on right now. Should they reach some kind of deal, I'm sure that Trump will sit there and say, "Turn this bird around. Let's go to Istanbul."
Yeah,
not Constantinople, Istanbul. That's where the meeting is. Let's get there.
Doesn't that sound like an old song?
Yeah, it does. I don't know where that just popped into my head a couple of shows ago too.
Once in radio, always in radio. Yeah, that's a good point. He probably is keeping today open, so he has the flexibility to go to Turkey. Now, and they're 7 hours ahead of us.
All right, let me bring up something. It's not on the talking points here, but I see it floating out there. Everybody's up in the air about the 747B,
right?
The gift, which really. It's not a done deal yet, but okay, let's say it is, and he gets to use it, and then it goes to the Trump library, and they're looking to see the Emollients Act to see if it works or not. But either way, I guess there's even Republicans going, I don't know, it's not a good look. I really haven't seen or heard that, but the left is sure touting it. What are your feelings? You know?
I think it's like Trump said. If someone, what was it? He used the analogy. Sam Snead, the old golfer, he used to say, if they give you a hole, if they give you take it. Exactly. You don't argue over a gift. You take it and you move on. Because usually when you pass on a gift like that, it comes back to bite you. And
because they're trying to say, well, Qatar, Qatar, whatever you want to call them, they're going to want something for it. Well, jet or no jet, they're going to want something. That's all. They've all got something they want.
L3 Harris down in Florida is the company that's going to retrofit that jet. He's not going to Boeing. And I was thinking, when they do this, when this company L3 Harris, I don't know anything about them, but I would imagine they're a security. I do know they're a government contractor, L3 Harris. So I'm thinking that they're going to go over it from stem to stern, from nose to tail. They're going to go over that plane like with a fine-tooth comb. They'll go into the fuel cells and check to make sure that they're all. I mean, they will check everything on this plane, the gift. So don't worry about it being corrupted by some bad actor. And I was thinking, even things like the engines, you may say, well, maybe the engines are going to be a problem. I'm thinking that the engines that are on Air Force One right now are probably fairly new. Because you can swap engines out fairly easily.
Yeah. Well, wherever they get the engines from, Rolls-Royce, I know that's what's on Trump Force One. They probably, and they're a big maker of those engines. But L3 Harris, now, you're right, they're a defense contractor, and I think one of the most sophisticated new planes out there right now came from them, so they know how to do it. And everyone's going about the cost of the plane. It's going to take $1 billion, and that's their thing. It's going to take $1 billion to, retrofit this plane. Okay, if it does. But you know what? If you got a brand new 747 whenever it was ready, it would take you $1 billion. And let me tell you something. That $1 billion is not a one-time expenditure. It goes on and technology changes, threats change. So that upkeep, unless you're saying, yeah, we can put $1 billion in it and she's safe and secure for the next 40 years, you need to have that hole in your head fixed because it's an ongoing money siphon for security.
And I have not heard anybody say that they canceled the contract with Boeing for the 747s that were on order, which says to me that they're going to take the gift, they're going to retrofit the gift so that it's a stunning airplane. It's going to look fantastic. Because I don't know whether people are aware of it or not, but the 747 design of Air Force One now is the old design. It's the older shape. The newer 747s, the more recent ones, are a little bit more sleek. Do you know what I'm saying? If you look at them, they have more style to them, which would be appealing to Trump.
You know what they're doing with planes that are from the same age as Trump or as Air Force One?
What?
They're scrapping them. They're turning them into keychains. But now think about this now. This is an idea for somebody, all right?
Yeah.
Heavy metal rockers, Iron Maiden.
Used to be a pilot. One of the guys from
He decided that he was going to get a pilot's license so he could fly his bandmates around in a 747. So they had, I forget what they called it, but they had that plane. So a company came along and said, you know what, you've retired the plane. Well, they sold the plane. And a place used it for cargo for a couple of years. The plane came back. It's retired. Went to a salvage yard where they cut it up and they said, you know what, we're going to make these little keychains. All right. They made tens of thousands of them.
Right.
And they were selling for $70 plus. Could you imagine if you sat there and took Air Force One?
Oh, my gosh.
Take the technology out of there, scrap all the metal, and made these souvenir, presidential keychains that are maybe, once in a lifetime.
Maybe rings. People could wear a ring.
or rings.
Yeah.
They could do rings, necklaces, and keychains.
That's right.
And make it out of the metal of that plane. And since there's only so much metal on the one or two of them, that's it. You know, you could sit there and say, well, it's 2025, $2,025 a piece.
It doesn't even have to be just from the shell. It can be from the motor mounts. It can be from the interior of the plane.
They stamp something on it and say that this is, and it's authenticated. Take that idea from a rock band and a company, and now other bands are doing it. Now they're just taking planes and giving you the history of it. Well, this was the call number of the plane, and this is its history, and here's your keychain.
Yeah.
Well, and they're getting $80 for that. I'm sitting there going, you could take this. This keychain represents all these presidents. You got Barack Obama, you know, so you put him on there. You got Bush, you got both Bushes, you know, it goes back so many years.
Yes.
The Clintons and Trump, yes. You've got gold right away with that plane that could pay for both new Air Force Ones and Trump's plane.
And dare I say, President Trump, if you're listening to this on your travels right now, you can take Trump Force One when you're ready to retire that and sell that for even more.
Yeah. Oh, you know how many Trumpers would sit there and get in line to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a Trump keychain?
Oh my gosh, it'd be like gold. You could have a watch. You know, he sells watches now, Bill. Can you imagine having the face of the watch being
part of the Trump Force One?
Yeah,
and
Trump Force One watch. Wow.
They scrape the paint off, they redo it, they hammer it down, they mold it, they cut it, and they put it in there, and that dial is part of Trump Force One. And there's only so many watches.
Wow.
You know what?
We
if
just
you
gave
guys
him a great
do that,
idea.
I want a cut. Jim wants a cut. Sorry, but this is an original idea for you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
It's a great idea too. So, President Trump, I'm concerned for him right now. I'm praying for him. He's in the most dangerous part of the world. He's traveling in the Middle East. You know, there are a lot of people in that area of the world who would like to do him harm. And I think that goes to what Comey did. It's, you know, was it a signal or was it a casual, off the cuff comment? There's a part of me that says he did it as a signal, like, all right, guys, do this. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, Bill, why I think it. I think Trump is about ready to drop the hammer on a bunch of deep state insiders, including possibly Comey. And Comey's nervous. He was walking that beach for a reason. He's afraid. And I think that I think he did it intentionally with the hopes that somebody would do the dirty work for him and get rid of Comey's problem. I don't know. That may seem like speculation on my part, but I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Yeah, a signal in his mind, because I got to say that you might say there's sleeper cells out there.
Yeah.
But there are some people that are waiting for instructions from anybody, from anywhere, to go out and do something, because that's what they do. They either kill for a living or they kill for fun. Somehow they make money, or they don't care. But either way, that going out there, that just fired up all these little sleepers, wannabes and would-bes and RBs, not the food chain, to sit there and go, so the would-bes, wannabes, and RBs are going to be out there going, all right, you got it.
You know, the other thing that scares me, Bill, if you watched him on the trip, he looks thinner, and that says to me he's not wearing his vest.
Yeah.
Maybe it's uncomfortable or hot. He's in the Middle East. You guys who are protecting the president, you have got to put the vest back on him. Mm-hmm. He's in a hot spot, literally, and he has to be protected.
Yeah, you got to do something to protect him. Do you remember the Pope Mobile when they actually did the little mobile with the bulletproof glass and everything? You really need to. And look, I don't care, who is president, because they are our commander in chief. You have to protect them, and you do that at all times. whether you've got the winning quarterback or not, you protect your quarterback. He is our quarterback. He's calling the plays. He is the man in charge. And I'm saying he's doing a good job. Your teammate shouldn't be sitting there going, I don't know. We got the wrong guy up there calling. When I was with the Jets and we lost that season, didn't win a damn game, we had a guy on the calling the shots. Yeah, you had a guy, all right. If you see me looking around, because we're not on video, but you see me looking around.
Yeah.
When I got up this morning, I went out and got my cup of coffee. I was looking. I was going, wow. I couldn't see but 20 feet. It was all like a white cloud, just fog. And I'm looking out the back. I heard some rumbling, but the window right there, it's pitch black. It's like a low thunder cloud outside.
Wow.
So if you hear a boom and that was me.
If I lose you quickly, now I know why.
You'll see a flash.
Yeah, and that'll be it. And then smoking cinder.
Yeah, I'll be toast on the ground. Somebody might be going, yeah.
President Trump is in the most dangerous situation of his life right now. And by the way, Bill, they have. I'm not sure about the Secret Service. If you remember the response after July 13th, it was abysmal. First, the Secret Service director, the lady, I forgot her name, she came out and she was terrible. Her response was self-serving and it was not honest. And she retired. She resigned after that. Then they put in an acting director, and he came out and he did the same thing. You would have thought he would have come out and been different, but he came out and protected his derriere too, and he was in office until Trump replaced him with Curran, who's in there now. They've got to start acting like the premier protection agency in the world again. Although they have their track record, when you think about it, hasn't been stellar. They blew it in Dallas, and they blew it in Washington. In 1981 with Reagan and James Brady. James Brady was terribly wounded. He was paralyzed, and he had a brain trauma, and he died about, 15 years later? But it was a direct result. He died from his wounds, from his injuries. People say, well, he died almost 20 years later because of his injuries. If he didn't...
he suffered.
Yeah, if he didn't get shot in the head, he'd probably be alive today. But anyway, they haven't had a great track record of protection. They better start getting their acts together. Now, what we don't know is this, Bill. Here's what we don't know. I take that back. What we don't know is how many times they have rescued the president, and we just never find out about it. How many times they've saved the president's life, and we'll never know, because that's their job. They save the president, and they keep it out of the news because they don't want copycats. They don't want people who are out there who are easily swayed to think, well, I can do better than that, So they just keep it a secret. I would imagine President Trump. I've heard rumors, Bill. I've heard rumors even when he was. I heard that there was. They had to put bulletproof glass in the president's room in Mar-a-Lago, because they were afraid of sniper rounds.
Isn't that pretty sad that you have to do that? And you know that there's always one point of entry that somebody didn't think about.
Yeah, that's true.
And, so the old saying, you got to sleep with one eye open.
Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Trump doesn't sleep much anyway, and that's probably a good thing.
What amazes me, Bill, is Trump knows this. He's a very smart guy. He has to know all the stuff that we're talking about right now. Yet he goes out there.
I think that when he got in office the first time, he stepped into something that he probably didn't anticipate how bad it was. And when he stepped into it, there is a consensus out there. When you attack the left or you're their perceived enemy, it is a fight to the death. They don't care that you go, hey, you know what? You beat me. I'm out of here. I don't care that it was a rigged election or not even say that.
Yeah.
Just go, you beat me. I'm done. I'm going to go live my life. That's not good enough. So when he was sworn in the first time, they swore in that they will not rest until he's dead. And that's what I firmly believe.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right.
So he'll never, until the day he dies, rest. And sadly enough, they're looking at Melania. She's not safe. They're looking at the Trump boys. They're not safe. And they're looking at Barron, because Barron is showing signs that he's got a great mind, and he's pretty quip, with what he says.
Yeah.
And he's conservative, very conservative. And, the kid's getting his education. So chances are you're going to see that guy in, several years, maybe running for some kind of interim political office.
It's funny,
the
Bill.
big one.
The Trump family has a history.
Yeah.
You may say, well, what are you talking about? John Trump. You're saying, who's John Trump? In
his brother.
1943. No, his uncle.
Yeah, his uncle, okay.
John Trump. I think he had a brother, John, too. But he could be Donald had, yeah. But John Trump was his uncle. He was a professor of mechanical engineering, I believe, at MIT. He was so respected and so nationally renowned that when Nikola Tesla died in the New Yorker hotel in 1943, they sent John Trump, the government sent John Trump to his suite to go through the 80 cases of documents that were there. Because a lot of people could look and they wouldn't understand what he was doing. But yet John Trump went there and he knew exactly what was going on. Now, he came back and he said, I think his findings were there's really nothing to see here. But a lot of people speculate. He also came back quickly with that answer. A lot of people speculate that it was a contrived answer because there was a lot to see and they didn't want the world to think that they had it.
I have a thought, and I'll share it with you after we ask you to like and share. All right, so here's my thought on John Trump. Let's say that, because Nikola Tesla was a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that we are striving to do, maybe he figured out how to do. It might be something as simple as a push-pull system with magnets to do something to drive a mechanical engine back and forth, that push-pull north-south, that could drive a piston, that could drive a generator, that could be free electricity. I don't know, but he was a smart guy. So maybe John has that or had that. Trump is aware of it, and he is now teamed with a friend that is about nothing but technology.
And what does his friend call his company?
Tesla.
And I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. You just can't. The last thing, the last big thing.
Thought.
Well, it's a good one. The last big thing that Nikola Tesla was working on was something he called. Well, he didn't call it. He called it something that was much kinder and gentler. But the New York Times got word of it, and they called it the death ray. The death ray. And here's the thing. That most technical people will tell you it was genius and it worked. Supposedly, Hitler wanted to steal it when Tesla died. That's why I think they sent in John Trump to get rid of it and squirrel it away. They ended up shipping 60 cases of those documents after they were examined, I'm sure, and copied. They ended up sending them to the Tesla Museum in his home country. I believe, was it Serbia? I believe his home country, or Slovakia. I think it was Serbia. Anyway, there's a museum in Europe dedicated to Tesla, and they sent it there, all those documents. You're saying, isn't that great? Well, it's great, and it's not great, because you see there were 80 cases originally, and they lost 20 of them. There's 20 cases of stuff from Tesla, and they believe it's all related to the death ray. that they can't find. I don't know. It's wrong. Gee.
I think answers are out there, and that's a conspiracy show. And again, we've established conspiracy is just undocumented truths. That's all there is.
It's not a conspiracy. That is not that's factual.
Well, that's factual.
That's
but
actually, there are 20 cases that are gone.
But what I'm talking about, there are things, there is knowledge out there that right now might be a dream or a conspiracy that I think that there might be answers to. Tesla was an interesting man, and so was Einstein, that they connected to a source for knowledge and energy outside of their body, almost into space.
Tesla thought that Einstein was overrated.
Probably.
Tesla thought that he was the smartest guy on the planet. Tesla had a scientific ego. He was a terrible businessman, but a genius when it came to technology. Like a lot of guys, he didn't know how to pay his bills, but he knew how to build the next great thing. It came out of his head. The death ray I was telling you about?
Yeah.
They believe we have it now. They believe that it was put into satellites to knock other missiles out of the sky. It's part of our Star Wars defense system that Reagan was talking about, that everyone laughed at initially. We supposedly have the death rays in some of the satellites right now protecting our country.
Look, I think there's a lot of answers to our future that could be. One of the problems that we have is these answers go against the grain of something that is part of the deep state, whether it's the oil industry or whatnot that we are tied to. And these entities don't want to let go of certain things. It's very possible that we have a renewable source of energy that's clean, that has nothing to do with physically what you would think of today. There's so many things out there that...
well, you and I have talked about the hydrogen car, which runs on water.
Mm-hmm.
They can do it, folks.
Yeah, and then there's the scary stuff. I mean, maybe we're setting up another show, but, there's actually talk of people saying, the little cyber implant will be downloaded into... Because there's been talk about people saying they should have done it with Stephen Hawking's, taken all of his memories and thoughts, and they could have dropped it into a computer.
Well, who's to say they didn't?
Well, who's to say they didn't? You're right. And, because there's talking about, you know what? We can make a cyber world and everybody can be in there and live forever.
I can see the movie now, Bill. Right now. I can see the film right now where
can see that.
They walk into a computer room. There's this big, massive computer. What do you call that? I call that the Steven. What?
You've been Stevened.
Yeah.
Or the 86er.
No, that's that's the Stephen Hawking's computer.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But there are things like that, and you might go, well, you know what? I'd have no pain. I'd be young forever in that virtual world. Yeah, you would. But, there'd have to be rules and things. And I'm sitting there going,
would you be aware? I wonder, would you be aware that you're a computer? If that were the case, I wouldn't want that. That'd be prison. If you feel like you're a person alive with a body, that's different.
Okay, when people sit there and do virtual reality, the goggles and stuff like that, they're actually in that visual matrix.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. You feel like you're actually there.
How would you know the difference? You wouldn't know the difference. It's just the way it is, and you're there. But I don't know. I mean, would you give up your mortal soul?
I think you're really you're playing with God.
Yeah, you are. You're playing God. That's what you are. Yeah. But hey, you know what? That's a deep show, and that wasn't what this show.
Well,
but, sometimes.
But getting back to it all started with us talking about John Trump.
Yeah,
the Trump family's been around for a while, and there's more to it. There is. I mean, we could get into while we're talking about this, but supposedly, think about this for a second. Supposedly, there is a book, an English book, that was written in 1896, and the main characters of the book are Baron and his faithful sidekick Donald. That's 1896. Barron and his faithful sidekick Donald. I'm just saying, is it a coincidence? Probably, yeah. But then again, who knows?
Well, with everything that's going on, you've got an interesting family, the Trumps, and people now would be going, oh, but look at all the scandals and everything about that. We had another interesting family in history that's not so ancient, the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, oh boy, talk about some scandals and, sexual stories and,
Sure.
booze and everything, and actually even the Trump and, there's, you brought up Juan 7,
Juan 07, yeah.
107, which is,
not his real name, by the way, in case you,
no,
it's not his real name. And Bill and I were trying to figure out, where did he get that nom de plume, 107?
it's a birth date.
Yeah, we think it's a birth date. You're saying, well, whose birthday it isn't?
Yeah, you'll love this.
It is the birth date of Caroline Bennett. You're saying, well, who's Caroline Bennett?
His wife.
It's JFK Jr.'s wife,
Yeah.
born January 7th, 107.
107.
I mean, maybe it's just a coincidence, folks. Maybe it is. I don't know. But this is a character who's out there right now. I actually don't follow
Isn't
him.
he the guy that they say was also, you'd see him or something like that, or they thought it was him, but you really never see him when he comes out and says something.
Well, they say they see him saw him at a lot of the rallies in disguise.
Yeah, in disguise, but
Yeah.
when he does something, you see his feet or his
He
shoes.
was right behind Trump in Butler. If you look at when Trump gets shot and he's on the stage floor, right behind him is that character with the little hat, and it's obvious. I say it's obvious. It appears to be makeup and disguise on this guy, and he goes all the time to these different events. Now, maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's not a makeup situation. Maybe it's just a guy who has some distinctive features. I don't know. But the thing is, this 107, the rumor is it's JFK Jr. and that he didn't die. I'm not going to get into the whole. And he, by the way, he denies. Oh, he doesn't deny it. He just doesn't. He evades the answer.
He doesn't acknowledge it. He dances around it. But maybe he's a time traveler. I don't know. Maybe it's just the fruitcake and bourbon I had for breakfast. He could be talking to me
It
too.
could be gas. I know.
You be the judge.
Yes, I think that.
Well, I hope not.
I think that this is.
I got to go see my dentist and.
Well, I think there's a lot that we don't know about. A lot of things that are happening in our world that. And by the way, anything we just said in that segment about 107, I don't follow 107.
Neither do I.
I've heard him. I bumped into him talking on occasion when I'm looking for something interesting to listen to.
The first time I heard the name, you mentioned it the other night. We were not on the podcast. We were just talking. And I said 107. Well, if there's anything there, it's got to be a code. And then 7. Well,
right.
And I started looking around, and then it's, oh my God, it's his wife's birthday, and I'm going, well, there you go.
Yep, it's
it's a tribute to her.
We don't know. We don't know what's going on,
but it would be a good angle to do. So
it'd be an interesting movie. But anyway,
conspiracy buffs, have fun.
Yeah, I do think that. By the way, I've never heard anybody talk about 107 and Caroline Bennett's birth date. That's something which we discovered on this show. Now, maybe we just have too much time.
Oh, don't worry.
Too
It'll
much
be
time
out
in
in a week.
Yeah, we have too much time on our hands, I think.
I'll be watching the History Channel new series 107.
He's a character, and he is. If you listen to him talk, and I have, he's a smart guy, and he does sound authoritative. But look, maybe in the future we'll find out that he was right on the money, and there was more to his story too. I don't know. I do think there are people out there. I think, for example, Laura Logan. They've taken a brilliant journalist like Laura Logan. I'm talking about mainstream media, somebody with numerous Emmys and many accolades from her fellow journalists, and all of a sudden, when she has a different opinion than the one that is being fostered by the media, they try to crush her. They try to crush her, and she's not to be crushed. This lady was almost murdered in Egypt back a few years ago. She was raped, and it was just a vile assault on her, and she was lucky to get out alive. But she's a resilient person, and she's bounced back. Yeah. I'm sure she's never forgotten, but she has not let that define her alone, which I think is to be admired.
Those scars are deep and forever. I only know that because of a family member. So I'll leave it at that. But, bless her heart. But she's doing a great job.
Sebastian Gorka was talking with, he, by the way, now is the Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism. He completely destroyed a reporter from the far-left Politico on a stage and an event that I think was sponsored by Politico. So he's sitting in a den of Politico people, right? And he came back like a tiger. Listen.
A member of Al-Qaeda. If you're a member of Al-Qaeda, you're a terrorist.
How do you know if they're members of these gangs? What I'm saying
is... You mean the tattoos, MS-13 on our knuckles doesn't help it?
Those...
Do you have tattoos of Al-Qaeda?
The tattoo did not say MS-13. I don't want to get into that.
Oh, of course it does. It's just accidents. The four symbols represent the letters MS. See, this is why Politico is a joke. This is why you are gutter press and fake news. That those four symbols that just happen to comport with the letters MS and the numbers 13 don't, in this case, represent MS-13. You're sitting here live defending a member of MS-13. That's why I regret coming here. Because this isn't journalism. This is protecting those who hate America. Shame on you. We are saving lives. Sir. Saving lives. How about Maryland fathers compared to Maryland mothers? Like Rachel Marin, mother of 5, raped and murdered and thrown in a ditch. How about Jocelyn Nungare, age 12, raped a mile from her home and thrown in a ditch. It's strange that Politico doesn't do articles about her, that mother, or that 12-year-old girl. Why is that? Why is the MS-13 guy with the knuckle tattoos more important in terms of due process than the lives of 12-year-old girls brutally raped? It's weird that the priorities shift to defending the member of an FTO, but not the children and the women. Dan Crenshaw told me a story once of a 16-year-old girl who was smuggled across this border. The parents paid $5,000 for her to live in America, the land of milk and honey. She ended up locked in a room in New York, raped by more than a dozen men every day for 18 months until she escaped. She went to Dan Crenshaw's office, and I'm no friend of Dan Crenshaw's, okay? He's still got TDS. And that girl said to him, please close the border so another girl doesn't have to be raped by 12 strange men every day for 18 months. It's strange that Politico doesn't cover those stories. Could you tell me why?
We have covered.
No, you haven't. You have not covered those stories. I'd like to see the Jocelyn Nungare, Rachel Marin stories in comparison to the Russia collusion garbage. I mean, let's be honest.
Let's move on.
You have an agenda.
Let's move on. Let's move on, Jesus. Anyway, Sebastian Gorka, he was obviously they touched a nerve. Hey, folks, a reminder, if you're looking for our coffee, Right Side Coffee, Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, available at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com. Delicious coffee. Give it a shot. Go to our website, our gift shop on our webpage, rightsideshop.com. It's Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. Here's the guys that sing the jingle.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Oh, such a good job. Bill, yeah. I'm going to pour myself a cup of Right Side Coffee and call this one a day.
I got to brush my teeth because I got to go to the dentist, and I got to go out in this abyss of a storm that's outside. I'm going like, geez.
You having bad weather where you are?
It would look like you were going to step outside into a dark vortex that goes into something you don't want to go into.
Uh-oh.
But I got to do it today.
You got to do it for your teeth.
Sucks. I'll just say, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.